So we have been talking this week about the song of the day. And today's song of the day is the song of the day for Wednesday, which is Psalm 94. And the reason why the Levites sang Psalm 94 in the temple on Wednesday is because Psalm 94 opens with the words, Kel nekames Hashem, kel nekames sifia. The Lord is a God of retribution. O God of retribution, reveal yourself. Judge of the earth, arise. Render to the arrogant their recompense. Okay, so the psalm talks about God exacting judgment against all those who worship idols. What's the connection with Wednesday? Wednesday was the day that God hung the sun and the stars and the moon in the heaven. That was the day that Nitla Ma'iris, the luminaries, were hung in heaven on that day, on Wednesday of creation. And when God hung these luminaries, so he gave these luminaries unusual power that you don't find in creation, that the luminaries basically dictate and determine life on earth, right? Things grow and life on earth is possible from the sun, from the moon, and from the constellations. All of these elements make life on earth as we know it possible. And so it seems that these constellations and these luminaries have some sort of autonomous power that was, albeit granted by God. And this is what led the first idolaters astray. So when God creates the world, he creates Adam and Eve. They're literally interacting with God and created by God's hand, handcrafted by God in Eden. And everybody knew that there was a God who created the world. The problem was that over the centuries and over the generations, what started to happen was people started to look at life in this world and think about God deeply and philosophically. And they felt that God, creates such a magnificent world. The creator must be so much greater than this world. In which case, it's likely that he has moved on to other godly endeavors. And that's why they look around, they see life on earth as possible from the stars and the sun and the moon. And they say, well, he's given them the power and the authority to rule life on earth. And so they started to worship the sun and the moon. In fact, the early idolaters were referred to as, we have that term still today, you find it in a lot of Jewish works, the term Akum. Akum is an acronym, an abbreviation for the words Ovdei, worshippers of Kochavim Umazalot, of the stars and the constellations. Because the early idolaters, they worshiped the stars and the constellations and the sun and the moon. So what was their mistake? Their mistake was they felt that God had abandoned earth or moved on to bigger and better things and left earth at the hands of the stars. And so they worship the stars. So that all gets set into motion on Wednesday, which is why we read this psalm on Wednesday. Now, but I would like to share something more positive about this psalm, even though it seems a little harsh, very judgmental. It opens with God of retribution. So there's a beautiful teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov says like this. The verse says, look at the opening verse here of the psalm on page 73. The Lord is a God of retribution. O God of retribution, reveal yourself. So the Baal Shem Tov taught like this. He said, there's once a poor man, a simple person who of no consequence, and he once committed a crime against the king, which was a serious crime that deserved a serious punishment. And yet, surprisingly, rather than punish this simple person, the king took that person, brought him into the palace. And in the palace, the king allowed this person to observe what goes on in the palace and how the king runs the country and all the different people and the kingdom, and all the advisors and the ministers and the representatives from the different parts of his kingdom would come to the king, and how the king would listen to them and rule, and so on and so forth. And the king kept showing this simple person all of the inner workings of the kingdom and of his leadership, his rulership, and started to promote this simple person through the ranks in his inner circle. So the Baal Shem Tov says, imagine this simple person. He was a person who lived in the middle of nowhere, of no consequence, probably never saw the king in his life, just knew that he has a king. And he, whatever, so one day, because he knows of this king, is somewhat in the abstract, in the theoretical, so this person felt that he could commit a certain crime. But now, as he gets to know the king, the more he gets to know the king, the more he gets to see behind the curtain and the inner workings of the palace, the more he starts to respect the king and appreciate the king. The more he starts to appreciate the king and comes to know the king, the more he starts to regret what he had done. The more he regrets the crime he committed. So in other words, there are two ways we can punish a crime. One way is somebody commits a crime, you punish them, right? You throw the whole weight of the law against them, right? Throw the book at them. Another way to quote unquote punish them is rather than to punish them, but to show them to God, for God to show Himself to us. You know, the Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Barditchev once said, "God, what do you want from the Jews? You know, you want them to do the right thing and not to stray and commit sin, and yet what you did was you put all of the temptations of the physical world out in front of them, in front of their eyes, and you put all of the beauty and majesty and pleasure and depth of Judaism and of you hid it away in these big thick books in a foreign language." He says, I have an idea. Why don't you do the opposite? Take all the temptations of this world and tuck it away in big thick volumes, on a dusty shelf, and take all the pleasures and the depth and beauty of Judaism and put that in front of their eyes and see how they behave. It's not fair, right? So the Baal Shem Tov teaches that what we're saying is, God of retribution, reveal yourself. Not start smiting and start, hailing, raining down hail and lightning. Rather, reveal yourself. God, if you were only to reveal yourself, that would be the retribution. That would be the rectification. If you reveal yourself to us, we will immediately regret our behavior. We would immediately turn to serve you. So that's from the opening of the Psalm. But let's look at something interesting on the bottom, at the end of the Psalm. So if you look at the bottom of page 73, the Psalm actually ends with the first word on the last line on the page in the Hebrew, right? Yeah, where in the English it is the Lord will destroy them, right? Now you see what that means. You see how that psalm ends. Let's look at what's the whole verse here. He will turn their violence against them and destroy them through their own wickedness. The Lord our God will destroy them. That's the end of Psalm 94. And we don't like to end on a sour note. We don't like to end on a harsh note. So therefore, we added the first three verses of the next Psalm. This is Psalm 94. So the first three verses of Psalm 95 were added to the end of the Song of the Day. Yeah, let us raise our voices in jubilation to the rock of our, come, let us sing to the Lord, let us raise our voice in jubilation to the rock of our deliverance. Right? The first three verses of Psalm 95. Now, if you'll notice, those verses might seem familiar to you. Right? Right? These first three verses are the opening to verses of Kabbalat Shabbat. So, as I mentioned, the reason they're added here is so that we end this psalm on the song of the day, because we're talking about singing a song. We want to end it on something positive. But there's something else, a little deeper Chassidic interpretation by Rabbi Shmuel of Lubavitch, the Rebbe Maharash, the fourth Chabad Rebbe, who says like this. We know that every day, we've been saying every morning, today is the fourth day of the Shabbat, right? The third day of the Shabbat. All week, starting from Yom Rishon, the first day, it's the first day of Shabbat. All week, we're mindful, as we talked about on Sunday, all week we're mindful of Shabbat and we prepare for Shabbat. But more specifically, the week can be divided into two. You have what comes after the Shabbat, the Basar Shabbata, the days that come after Shabbat, and then you have Mikame Shabsa, the days that precede Shabbat, right? Which has even halachic significance in that there's certain things that you can't, so before I get to the halachic significance. So the first 3 days of the week, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, are days that are after the past Shabbat, which is why halachically, even if you didn't make the Havdalah, you didn't recite the Havdalah prayer at the end of Shabbat, you have till Tuesday to do it, because the first 3 days, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, just are days that follow Shabbat, right? So they're connected to the previous Shabbat, although they're also connected to the next Shabbat, but connected to the previous one. And then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday are now days that precede the Shabbat. Mikame Shabbata, the days that precede Shabbat, the days that lead up to the coming Shabbat. So that starts on Wednesday. And that's also why I mentioned halachically, there are certain things that a person shouldn't do beginning on Wednesday, because we have to be mindful of what kind of situation that might put us in come Shabbat. So already starting from Wednesday, we have to be more mindful, even more so than earlier in the week. Okay. So Wednesday is the beginning of the next, is already as we turn to the next Shabbat. So says the Rebbe Maharash, a person comes to Wednesday morning, he's davening, and he starts to think, what am I going to eat on Shabbat? And what am I going to eat on Shabbat doesn't just mean what am I, how am I going to be able to scratch together a few pennies so that I can buy something to eat, but also what am I bringing into Shabbat spiritually? How am I entering Shabbat? Am I entering Shabbat in a spiritually appropriate way or not? And when you're thinking, it's Wednesday, it's the middle of your week, and immediately it becomes it's bitter. It's a bitter pill. Well, where am I, and how far away am I from being ready for Shabbat? So a person gets sad. So what are you supposed to do? I'm wondering, with what will I enter into? What am I bringing into Shabbat, both material and spiritual? What am I bringing into Shabbat? How am I going to be able to pay for the gefilte fish? And how am I going to, what is the spiritual insight or growth that I've made over the course of the week that can allow me to enter Shabbat proudly? What am I going to do? What's going to be? So the answer is bitachon, confidence in God. God will take care of us. And therefore, if we have bitachon, we're going to be happy. So therefore we say, L'chu niranan al Hashem, come, let us sing to the Lord. Sing, be happy, be joyous, and be confident that God will provide us a means to be able to purchase whatever we need for Shabbat, and will also provide us a way for us to be inspired, to be able to actually grow and to be spiritually more refined and of greater character. So we start to say what's called the small L'chu niranan, the mini Kabbalat Shabbat, L'chu niranan here at the end of the Song of the Day for Wednesday. Okay, today's Chumash is let's